Hello and welcome to Horror Boys. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris
and Isaiah.
We are the Horror Boys, and this is a podcast on the internet.
It is certainly one of them.
It is one of them. What is Horror Boys, you may be asking, though? It's not just a podcast on the internet. It is specifically a horror movie podcast where we review a horror movie every week. And this week, we are reviewing Nightmare on Elm Street. That's right, we're reviewing it again. Sorry, 2010. We're reviewing the remake.
Good one.
The better one, as some people say. I've heard people say it.
Huh.
Do they?
This person... Sorry, no, actually, I hadn't heard someone say that. I lied. That no one's ever said that about this movie.
Like, I mean, maybe on Reddit, but I feel like people on Reddit would be even more fiercely, defendant that the original would be better.
The general internet consensus is this movie is one of the biggest atrocities ever to exist, which we'll get into my opinion on that opinion later. First, we will just talk about what happened in this movie that exists.
It's certainly one of the movies.
We open up with a creepy, I guess, credit scene where for some reason they wouldn't commit to their art style for the credits, because in the credits here we have this weird scratchy font for all the names, it's on a sidewalk or something. It's like sidewalk chalk, but right above it, normally covering it up, is a a font that they just put over
a standard text.
It's like
just text.
They
pulled up Microsoft Office and were like,
I guess we'll throw this on. Which makes me think that there had to have been a test screening where they did that, but someone complained, and they're like, fine, I guess we'll just throw this other text over so people can read it.
It's subtitles for the text itself.
Pretty much.
I couldn't read Mara Rooney's name in the sidewalk scrawled in chalk by children.
And I need to know who Mara Rooney, what her name is, because she is really bad in this movie.
She's really not that great, which is not super indicative of her entire career.
Yeah.
And that was the entire conversation. She's in a lot of films.
No, who's she playing in this movie?
Nancy.
Oh, she's the main actress. Yeah, Nancy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
She's our new Nancy.
Yeah, she's Nancy.
Oh, yeah.
She's the real Nancy.
And then we've got Kyle...
Greer or something like that?
Yeah, it starts with a G. And he's our new Quentin. Oh, wait, there was no original Quentin?
He's playing... Was it Glenn? Was that Johnny Depp's character? He's kind of playing that character, but not really. Because really, the only character that stays one for one the same is Nancy, but even she's not the same.
Kyle Gallner.
Well, here's the thing. None of these characters are the ones we start with, because we open with Dean, who is... he's waiting for some more coffee at the, at this, diner, which is the, Springwood Diner. Not the Craven, the great joke from the, third movie, I think was the first time we saw that.
Dude, yeah. And they dwell on the sign and everything. They're proud of the name of the Springwood Diner.
Slow zoom in. Very unoriginal name for, this diner in a town called Springwood. Mm-hmm. Also, I don't know if anyone else is affected by this, but, the opening with this character, Dean, he just looks like a bad, 2000s actor. And so as soon as his face showed up, the douchey hair.
I don't know. To be fair to this,
as soon as he showed up on screen, I was like, "All right, I'm out." I was immediately tuned out.
Oh, honestly, the guy wasn't around long enough for me to care one way or the other about his acting. He was just kind of there, and he wasn't bad though.
He wasn't good either.
He didn't stick out as bad.
Well, something that does plague movies, as we've already seen before in our last 2000 scary remake that we watched. Is that they always pull these actors?
Freddy vs. Jason, even though it's not.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I didn't mean to say.
Thankfully, that one has not been remade.
Yeah, but they pull these actors that are clearly 36, and they just slap some highlights on them and throw them to high school.
To be fair, my dad pointed that out because I actually ended up watching this movie twice this week because my dad was watching it, and I just ended up watching it with him again. And yeah, it wasn't a fun experience. But all of the actors range from 23 to 25. It's actually like, and they're playing like 17-year-olds. That's actually not that crazy in Hollywood.
That's typical like Disney casting.
That's
for
typical
most shows.
like everything casting for like high schoolers. I mean,
yeah.
Because let's be real,
That's
we don't want to get actual high schoolers in it because they have to play unless it is Disney. Disney sometimes actually gets real high schoolers, and we see what happens in those movies. If you want to know me and Chris's opinions on DComs, we have a series on a different channel.
That's true.
Decon.
But yeah, so this Dean guy, he wants some more coffee, but he can't find the waitress, so he just decides to get up and go look for her himself. And he goes into the back of the kitchen, and there's just a random fire there on like the grill. It's just burning like crazy. There's also like pig carcasses. Because if you can't tell at this point, it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, so we're probably in a nightmare. This is probably not how this diner actually is in the back. I know, crazy. There are not typically open fires and pig carcasses in dinosaurs. They don't have them in dinosaurs.
Typically.
There are no
Typically, you don't find those.
Scientists haven't discovered them. To be fair, though, we never do see the kitchen of the diner outside of the nightmare, so we can only speculate.
You know, that is true. But I have to assume it was not... There wasn't a raging fire in the actual diner. But hey, they never specifically said one way or the other.
Well, based on how calm they are later when it's not a dream sequence, I think we can assume.
You know, that's fair. And then Freddy, he jumps out in a jump scare, because that's what this movie really likes to lean on, is jump scares. Because it's 2010, baby, and we can't have movies that are just creepy throughout and like build to their scares. We have to randomly throw Freddy at the camera and make a loud noise so you know to be scared.
Thank you.
Yeah. He jumps out at the camera and he cuts Dean's hand, and Dean wakes up but has the cut in real life. Oh my goodness! What happens in the dreams happens in real life?
If you die in the video game, you die in real life, Austin.
No, you're thinking of Freddy's Dead.
Oh.
We agreed to not talk about that ever again.
Yeah. That's fair.
Then we have a scene where we meet Jesse and Quentin and his friend, who never gets a name and is only in this scene, who are talking to Nancy, who is the waitress.
Who barely matters more than the guy who doesn't get a name. Just kidding.
I mean, no.
He is the focal point.
She is, for like kind of.
But don't worry. Every time she is, or really any of these characters have a focal point, it will be boring beyond belief.
Except for, in my opinion at least, the character who is about to walk into the diner, and that's Chris, who is played by Katie Cassidy, who is the only one of the children actors that but the only one of the, high school characters that isn't just boring. I will say, unlike the last movie where the characters are insufferable, none of these characters are insufferable. I just don't care at all. Yeah. But, I felt like Katie Cassidy did a really good job where I, cared about her, and I was really mad when we realized she's not, when she's introduced as Chris, and I'm like, that's not Nancy. That means she's going to have to die. There was no Chris in the previous movies, but I know you're not Nancy, so you're going to die. And it's like...
Did you ever think that she resembled Nancy's mom in the original?
Chris?
Yeah, in this movie.
Maybe. I don't remember what Nancy's mom looks like, honestly.
Unimportant.
So...
I mean, I remember that the original Nancy also had a blonde friend who died in a very similar way that Nancy.
Chris is filling in for Tina in this movie, but for some reason we just didn't call her Tina.
This is Tina.
Even though
it's a remake. This is our own cool.
But so much of this movie is just.
But also, we take a lot
rehashing scenes or dialogue from other movies, but for some reason we changed all the characters' names except for Nancy, even though she doesn't really feel like Nancy at all.
Yeah, it's not at all the same role in the story.
No.
Yeah.
They're the same role in the sense of they're the final girl, but yeah, no, they're not.
This is like a remake in the sense that a LaCroix could technically be a soda. It's like, yeah, sure, you've got some of the elements, but you're missing the heart of what makes it what it is.
I guess that's fair. So where were we? Yeah, so Chris shows up. She goes over and talks to Jesse, and she's like she's the only character I care about in this scene. There's like we go like back and forth between these two conversations, Chris with Dean and the boys and Nancy, and the boys and Nancy one just is so boring and doesn't matter. And Chris, during this scene with Dean, though, does find out about his nightmares before Dean then falls asleep. And Freddy's here, and honestly, a point in the movie where you go, maybe this movie won't be bad. We get a pretty cool kill where he, like, forces him to slit his own throat with a knife, making it look like a suicide. And it looks really cool. Like, and you're like, oh, gosh, that's so deep. Like, at this point in the movie, you're like, I mean, some of those characters suck, but maybe this movie will be good. It's not. But you think it could be at this point. And I will say, I think that's one of the themes I've noticed in this movie is, for the most part, it's not great, like, at all. But then you have those couple moments where you go, man, that could have been really cool in a better movie. Yeah. And this is one of those moments.
Unfortunately, there's just everything else surrounding it.
Yeah, where were we, though? So he kills himself, and after he does that, I wrote Chris screams. I don't know why I felt like that was important enough to write down.
Maybe it's because she screams really loud and we get like a carried on scene. I can't remember if that's what happened, but it feels like
maybe it was one of those like classic, like maybe it was Jesse-esque, not Jesse the character in this movie, but Jesse the character in 2, the character that's awesome. But yeah, so now we head over to a funeral because that's what we do in Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There's a lot of funerals, which, I mean, there's a lot of characters that die, which makes sense.
I mean, yeah.
But there
are a lot of death.
I haven't watched a lot of horror movies, but I feel like not many other series go to funerals as often as Nightmare goes, you're going to get a funeral, okay? One of these characters gets a funeral. Only one, though. We'll kill off like 3 or 4 characters, but one will get a funeral.
Yeah, as someone who's seen a lot of horror movies, I feel like that is like just factually true. There's at least one funeral scene per Nightmare movie. Our dear friend has passed. And so we'll go to a funeral. We won't go to a funeral for any of the other deaths that happen throughout the movie. But for sure, the first one.
All right.
Well, there's got to be a revelation at a funeral and a revelation at a library in every Nightmare.
To be fair, this movie, it's technically a bookstore, not a library.
Yeah, it is a bookstore.
You could be confused because half of what the characters do at this movie is go on the internet, which is not something you typically think to do at a bookstore. It's like the thing, like people go to libraries because if they don't have internet, or that's a thing that people do. You don't typically go to the local bookstore to get on the internet, but whatever. We're not at that.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see a classic
like microfiche
machine.
The bookstore has more information on it. That's how it works.
Sure.
The internet knows more when it's around the books.
So at the funeral, which is, Dean's funeral, Chris sees a ghost, like this little girl that, like, kind of, first you kind of go, is this like a dream? Is this a ghost situation? Are we getting an Amanda Kruger ghost again? Is she back? No, it is. I mean, I guess in a sense you could be like really, like really heady with your discussion. I'd be like, it's actually the ghost of her innocent self from when she was a child. But yeah, we find out later that this is actually, child her visiting her in a dream.
Yeah.
Because, sure, why not? But this little girl, she's got, slice marks on her, her little dress. And you're like, oh, Freddy did that. Cool. Then Freddy grabs her leg, and Chris wakes up. Chris goes over, I think she goes over and sees a picture of herself with little kid Dean. And she's like, how? I didn't meet him till, I think they met in high school, I think.
Yeah.
But later, there's like her and some other character meet in 6th grade, which still, whatever, who cares? But yeah, so she sees a little kid her. She's really confused on how that's possible. And then Dean comes over and he doesn't, believe her. He doesn't think she's just crazy. Not Dean. Jesse. Sorry. Jesse comes over. And then
Dean is very dead.
Dean is dead. I'm sorry, they're both 2 characters who, for some reason, Chris gets 2 different love interest characters. She gets the guy she's currently dating and her ex, who becomes close to her again before they both die. It is kind of a weird.
Both stop being alive.
Yeah, it is a weird thing where she, for some reason, does have 2 love interests in this. I'm sorry, I got them confused. But then they're having
both very distinct characters who have a lot of personality, and oh wait, they don't have any of those things.
I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. Jesse has a personality. It's not a likable one, but it's there.
Yeah, it's the personality of being a douche.
Yeah.
Which was, well, I guess not necessarily. Dean didn't really have the opportunity to form a personality. He just died.
Yeah, Dean was just, sad.
He was sad and awake.
Yeah. But yeah.
What a mood.
So Jesse's not believing her, but Nancy walks up and does talk about how she does believe her. She thinks there is something here. Ooh. Excuse me.
Yeah, okay. Excuse me.
Yeah. Now we cut to some building that I feel like is supposed to mean something to me, but that's not my gosh darn Elm Street house. I don't know what building that crap is.
Oh, I was like, where's he going with this?
Yeah.
Dude, I was seriously rooting for that house to show back up, just so I know you'd have it.
I wanted the bit to continue, and then we get this crappy imitation that's not even like good. Like it's just there. It's disappointing.
Yeah, just a regular boring 2000s house.
Yeah. Then we get one of the first of many recreations of scenes from better movies, but recreations that are worse drastically. And that is when we have weird digital Freddy come out of the digital wall rather than the practical effect they used in the original movie.
It looks so bad in this one.
Inevitable. I mean, it's a high budget to press your face against a sheet.
It was it was actually latex in the original.
Oh, sorry.
And latex is hard to come by in 2010, so we had to use digital effects. And it looks like crap.
A lot of money to do. And it did not pay off.
Yeah.
May I say?
Yeah, it looks pretty bad.
It looks worse in every way. And that is a continuing thing. So do not worry, guys.
Yeah. You understand. After that, we cut. This is Nancy gets scared there because that's the scene from the first movie. Now we cut to Chris, who can't find pictures of her childhood. They're not in the scrapbooks. Oh no. What could this mean? So she decides to go to the attic, where she finds those childhood pictures, and she also finds a doll and the ripped dress from her dream earlier. Whoa, that's weird. Then, and Freddy's here. I guess we're still in a dream, so I guess maybe that dress doesn't actually exist ripped up like that. But yeah, Freddy's here. He scares her awake by like jumping at her. It's another jump scare. He jumps out and goes, ah, and she falls backwards, waking up. Sorry. He also, while he's scaring her away, he asks her if she remembers him. What? Why could how would she know him though? Well, you'll find out very soon.
Yeah.
And it's a thing.
I'll make it quite explicit.
Yeah, they really do a lot of Freddy jump scares in this movie, it is very disappointing every time.
I'll be honest.
None of them are they're not even scary jump scares. I will admit that I have been jump scared plenty of times. None of these hit.
No.
Even remotely.
Yeah, no. I'll be honest, I didn't really notice them the first time, but when I sadly rewatched this movie today, I noticed how many times it was happening. I was like, oh my gosh, another jump scare. Another jump scare. Oh cool, another jump scare.
Austin not realizing they were happening is a testament to how bad of a jump scare they are.
I mean, to be fair,
there are definitely attempts at them.
Mildly fair to the movie, I would have been taking notes a lot, so maybe I was looking down when the jump scare part happened.
I was looking dead at that movie, Austin. The whole time.
Yeah, but you have nerves of steel, Chris. And you know who doesn't have nerves of steel?
Nancy?
I was going to go with Quentin, I guess, because he's the next
Quentin?
part of the note. Which, to be fair...
Really, any of these characters?
Quentin is the guy who looks like he needs to cry the whole movie.
Yeah.
Dude, oh my gosh.
He looks like he's on the brink of
and...
tears.
Yes.
It's so... Ugh, this movie. These characters are so...
What's wrong, Nancy?
So many of them are so bad. The only one who's good dies first! Excluding Dean. Dean? Yes, technically Dean died first. But the first of the characters we actually get to know, the only one who I liked, they kill off first. Spoiler, I guess. Sorry, Chris is going to die.
Maybe if we survive this, we can go on a date.
We're not at that point yet. That's not till the end of the movie, Chris.
Sorry, I just wanted to highlight some of Quentin's great acting.
Quentin, at this point, tries to be there for Nancy, is what I wrote. I don't remember this scene at all, but apparently he tries to, comfort her or something.
Yeah, I remember they had like a long talk scene at school, and you were like, "Yeah, nothing happened worth note, so I'm just not going to write anything."
That sounds about right.
I was like, "Well, that's fair."
Then Chris falls asleep in class, and at first, and then Freddy ends up being there, and he's the teacher, and he tells her she shouldn't have fallen asleep in class. Which, it's good advice. Freddy's just there, like, being helpful. Which I'll mention here, because I think this movie has a lot of flaws. I actually really like Jackie's performance as Freddy. I think he did a different Freddy. Like, and here's the thing: no one can be Robert Englund. I really liked the creepy way Jackie portrayed him. I thought he did. I mean, there was like one or two moments where I'm like, okay, a little too much. Like, there's a point later where he goes a little too full Batman with one of his things he says to Nancy. But I'll bring it up. Don't worry, I remember it when we get to that point of the script. We'll bring it up. But there is a point where he straight up like Batman growls at her. But in general, I really liked him. I wish he was in a better movie. I think if there was like actually a good Nightmare on Elm Street reboot script, he would have been a great person to play Freddy in it. Because I think he did
compelling scripts. Yeah. Anything really.
Just anything better than this, he would have been great in it. Freddy was, I think, pretty good. Was he perfect? No. Was he Robert Englund? No. No one can be Robert Englund. Maybe we shouldn't have remade it.
He was probably the best part of the movie.
Well, him and Chris. But he was in more of it, so I'll give it to him. But yeah, he tells her not to fall asleep in class, and then implies, then this is kind of the first one where we get this implication that, she might have been his victim as a child. Because, this is the movie where they straight up say it. It was subtext in the original franchise. This movie
no
just...
more subtext or subversive hinting at it. It's just...
super text.
Yeah, it is the story.
In your face.
The story is that he was a child predator. Arguably, due to the story, they told us, not even a child murderer. They decided he didn't kill kids. He just violated them.
Yeah.
That is a good point.
There is no mention of
torture.
There is no mention of dead kids.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, the story depends on them all being alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean... Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the, as we more get into the story, we'll all share our opinions on parts that happen. But yeah, this is the first point where we get that part of the story. Then she wakes up screaming because, it's that classic. I think Nancy did it in the first movie. This time Chris is doing it because Tina really didn't have much to do in that first movie, so we had to give some of Nancy's spots to Chris. So yeah, she wakes up yelling. And then we cut to later that night, and Chris looks like she's about to go to her garage to go to the attic again, but her mom, catches her at the door saying, "Hey, I'm gonna leave." Apparently, her mom is a
flight attendant.
Yeah, she's a flight attendant, and she's leaving. That's it. That's her mom's role in this movie. She's gone.
I mean, it's a good job to write in for her.
Because
get her out of the movie for the next 12 hours. It's a way to
explain why she's not there later. But it's also just like, it felt like her character wasn't really there and then just is there. Like, there's like one scene earlier with her being like, well, I don't know where those pictures are, kind of a scene. And now there's this, and you're like, oh, okay, we're just going to, hi, I'm gone. Oh, okay, bye. Yeah. Bye, her mom. Sure. Whatever.
She's a high school girl. She's allowed to have a mom.
No, I don't have a problem with her having a mom. It was just, this scene felt so...
Shoehorned in?
Yeah, like... We have to explain why her mom's not here when, the alarm goes off later and she's dead. It's like, okay, cool. Like, we could have had, like, a bit of dialogue from her to Jesse rather than this scene, like, oh, yeah, my mom's not home. But instead we have this, like, scene, like, it's not, like, the longest scene, but it definitely was like, why is this here? Okay. Bye, her mom, which I think Chris pointed out while we were watching this. They actually did a really good job casting her mom. She looked a lot like she was related to Katie Cassidy, which is like, okay, wow. Which I don't think you can really say about either of the other two parents we meet in this movie. They're both bigger actors,
like your kids,
and that's why they were in this movie. But they don't look anything like their children. But yeah, so
Clancy Brown, Quentin's dad. I mean, they both have curly hair, so I guess.
Yeah.
That, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Now Chris is upstairs, and Jessie shows up at her window with once again, another jump scare, because that's what this movie is. When he shows up at the window, there's like a panning shot right before it happens, and then he pops up at the window, and it's like a fake out jump scare. Because why not? Let's only do jump scares in this movie.
Yeah,
and then
I mean the rest of the movie is very boring without them.
I mean, I guess. I mean, there's a couple moments that I will point out when they happen that I actually think are really good. We're not at them yet, and there's only a couple of them, but
yeah, there's like 2 of them, and it's not worth watching this round of movie to get
there's
to.
literally 2 scenes that I like. Chris opens up about her nightmares, which Jesse's had the same ones. There's a moment where she starts describing, Freddy's fingers. He's like, with knives on it. And you're like, okay, cool. We've seen this scene so many times. And I get it. It's a remake. This is somewhat made for a new audience. I get it. We have to do these beats, but it's just
a new generation of nightmares.
Yeah, So she opens up. He had the same kind of dreams. And then Jesse decides to stay over. And, and while they're sleeping, Chris wakes up. And she goes outside to find her dog, who I don't remember the dog's name, but he's dead now, so it doesn't really matter.
Not a live dog.
Because Freddy did kill him. He was trying to pet him, to be fair. He was just trying to pet the dog.
That's our first Freddy quip?
I mean, yeah. There are, I will honestly, once again, the line isn't great, but I kind of like his delivery on jokes in this movie. They're not, like, super silly. They're just, like, dark enough, and, like, I really like his little creepy, like, almost like smoker's cough laugh he does after he says jokes, which I don't know. I really like him. The movie doesn't. It's not enough to make this a good movie, but whenever he does stuff, I'm normally like, okay, I'm into this.
I get what you're saying. His like delivery of the jokes matches his portrayal of this Freddy.
And, like, the joke isn't even... I think the joke not being hilarious kind of fits. He's just kind of saying something creepy to get in their head a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, I liked it. But then she runs away from him, and now she's inside. And, wait, no, she's not. She's at a preschool. Get used to this preschool. We're going to be at this preschool for most of this movie.
Bedlam preschool.
All the other movies said, hey, let's go to the Elm Street house. This movie said, we heard you, Austin. No Elm Street house. Just a preschool you never heard of. And you know what? Respect. It's something different.
This is the original part of the movie.
Yeah, it is. It is the only original part of this movie. And honestly, it's the part I don't dislike. I kind of like the dark story. We'll get into that as it more unfolds. Yeah. I like it.
I agree.
I do kind of, well, I guess real quick here about how I mentioned earlier. I wish he still killed kids. I think it's weird to erase that part of his history. Like, it makes him so much more evil. I mean, like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Being a child predator is horrible and evil.
Yeah,
but being a child predator who also kills kids is more evil because you're doing more.
That is a double evil. That is twice the evil.
Well, I don't know. I guess you could go into, like, a way of saying that technically those kids don't have to live with the suffering, so is it less evil? But that's a weird...
Yeah, it's a weird moral gray area.
Yeah, it's a weird moral discussion I don't want to get into.
Definitely, this is not the channel for that.
I don't know. I mean, it could be. This channel can be whatever it wants to be. Now she's at the school, and little girl leads her past the singing girls. They're back, baby. They're all in white. They're singing. Yeah, first come for you. 3, 4. Better lock your door. 5, 6. Grab a crucifix. All that jazz. They're all here.
6.
But then, Freddy decides to sing his own little song. Not really, but he does have numbers. He's counting down. He has 3, 2, 1. Ready or not, here I come. And he puts a lot of emphasis on the word come, which I think was intentional, honestly, with the way this character is. Like, I think it was meant to go like, oh, gross.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now he goes to chase her a little bit. Yeah, so he scares her a little bit, and then she wakes up. Okay, it's over. So she goes to the bathroom, and we get one of those moments where you think we're going to get a mirror scare. Especially in this movie, you think, we're definitely going to get a jump scare here. This is where jump scares normally happen. And then she looks up at the mirror, and there's nothing there. She's all good now. She escaped Freddy. It's all good. Time to go to bed. Time to sit down, kind of slowly, and then lean over to go to bed. Oh my gosh, Freddy's in her bed. And yeah, he starts attacking her, and we get a recreation of a scene from the first movie. That's what you're here for, right? Not anything like original and different. You just want the same scenes again, but done somehow worse.
Done worse. That is important. We heard that you wanted them to
there
be
is
done
literally
much worse.
only one time they do one of these recreation scenes that isn't worse. It's not better. It's just not worse. We will get to that when we get to, and the reason why, it was the only one done practically, fully. Like this one, to be fair, I believe I've seen like footage. She is somewhat being like thrown around the room on like a harness system, but like it's not as crazy, and like we all know that like it's like a harness system with some green screen as well to add to it. It's like that's not as cool and impressive as that first time where they like had to tumble a room around because there was no way to do it otherwise. Like. And also, there's just, like, less... It's weird. There's, like, less blood, but also then more blood at the same time. Like, there's less blood in the room in general, but then when she gets cut at the end of flailing around, like, the wounds are really deep and, like, kind of, like, visceral, almost black-looking blood. Like, it's real deep. You're like, oh, okay. Didn't expect that. Especially after there was so little blood in that scene that had so much blood initially. But it was, like that really deep, like, you cut, like, something deep and, like, it's coming straight from the arteries kind of blood. And it was like, okay, respect movie. That's not a lot of respect, but, like, respect for the blood. I like the dark blood.
Is it practical dark blood?
Yeah, I think maybe it might have been digital. If it was, I will say...
I feel like I remember a lot of the blood in that scene being digital.
It might have been. It didn't come across as digital. They at least hid it in darkness in a way where I couldn't tell. As bad as
darkness is a very great ally of digital effects artists.
Which, to be fair, there are a couple other moments in this movie that are definitely digital effects that I actually think were okay. But we'll get to those.
Not a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of effects in this movie. For a nightmare movie, not a lot of surreal stuff happens.
Dude, yeah.
Which is
a very grounded nightmare movie.
Yeah.
One of its greatest strengths and one of its greatest weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not a lot going on.
And some of the few surreal things that are in this movie we've seen before, but better. So, but yeah, so where were we? I wasn't doing a lot of that off my notes because I just remembered the...
Tina gets murdered.
Yeah.
And now
Chris gets murdered.
Chris,
Tina was the character in the first movie.
They're not the same character.
This was Tina's death to Chris. Which, to be, I will also say,
same character.
Chris, I think, was a better character than Tina overall. Because Tina, I don't remember caring about her. She just kind of died. I cared about Chris, and then I was really disappointed when I realized, oh, she's gonna be like the Tina or something. Like it's like
I thought Tina was the main character originally in the first Nightmare film, right up until.
Oh, that's fair, but I just feel
she was so much of a better actor than.
She was better than Nancy, but she still wasn't like good.
No.
Like and also I want to say Heather Langenkamp became a great actor. Like her next two movies, I want to make sure we rectify that. We all didn't love Heather's acting in that first movie, but she did get really good. I want to make sure the Heather fans out there don't get mad at us. Heather Langenkamp is a great actress. She's only okay in that first movie.
Aged like a nice wine.
Sure.
Time. More refined.
Yeah, so after she dies, Jesse plays the role of Rod here, gets the blood all over him, and runs away, making him look like a guilty person.
Crazy man.
Yeah. So he runs away, and then somehow, magically, basically, sneaks into Nancy's room without any noise whatsoever, so he can grab her from behind to, tell her what happened.
Well, he took the karate ninja skills from a guy in Dream Warriors.
Oh. No, there was no guy who had karate in.
Oh wait, no, that was 4. That was
you're thinking of Dream Master.
Dream Master, yeah.
Maybe he took the cool flippy powers from Kristen from Dream Warrior.
The Dream Warrior.
Yeah, she was the Dream Warrior. No, they were the Dream Warriors.
Well, she had the most powerful power.
No, not Kristen. Wasn't Kristen the other girl? Kristen's the girl who's in 4 and 5.
So anyways, Jesse makes it into the room without making a noise.
Yeah. Nancy's doing some art right before she gets snuck up, because that's part of her character, I guess. She likes art and being emo, because that's what you remember.
She is an emo art girl.
When you think of Nancy, you think of an emo art girl, right?
Yeah.
When you think of Nancy, you think of a slightly less bland, like 2010.
I want to complain about this for a little before we move on. Here's the thing, like we just said, none of us loved Heather's acting in that first movie. But the character of Nancy was pretty great even from that first movie. So to then do what they did to her in this movie she's just
so uninteresting.
It's so insulting. It might be
the way she's introduced, she seems so marginal at the outset, you know? And everything is delivered everything's delivered so dispassionately, and she doesn't really have a controlling role in the story, and I mean until everybody else drops off, you know. I mean,
I hate it, and
like
I will say,
like, a slightly more emotional Kristen Stewart.
From my understanding,
very, very slightly.
Rooney Mara is a good actress in other things. I think she's won an Oscar, but she's so bad in this. And from my understanding, at least somewhat, she didn't want this role at all. And that's like she didn't want to do this, and she was like forced into the role by her like producer, like her like agent, and like she tried to fail the audition but still got the job. And looking at her performance in this, and here's the thing, it could have been the writing. I didn't read the script. Maybe it was written this way. But when you hear that she actively didn't want this role, and then you see this performance, you go, oh, it's because she phoned it in. And maybe it's not, but it's what it looks like. And it really takes a movie that's not great and makes it even worse because your lead character is just there.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's a totally fair disagreement or discussion to say whether or not she was good. To me, good means convincing, and I found her convincing. You know, especially compared to other characters on the screen in this particular movie. You know, I understood. She never took me out of it. That's like what you always do, right? And I never got that from her. It's just that the character herself, however well played by the actress, is just herself bland. Like, it's a bland character, you know. And yeah, maybe it was written that way. Maybe it is just her performance. I found her performance convincing, but the character herself is just doesn't take up a lot of space in the story at the outset, and
they don't do anything to make you care about their character.
Yeah,
we're talking about she might go on a date if they live.
There is that. So we've got that to look forward to. High stakes.
There is a love interest.
And she makes a joke about how I don't remember what the joke was, but it annoyed me when it was said. She made some sort of joke about like in his dreams or something stupid like that back to him after that scene because to try to like have levity, I guess, in that scene. I don't remember the exact joke, but it was something stupid like that. It was like, yeah.
I feel like you might have written it down, but
we'll see if I did when we get to it. I don't think I did, but I might have. Where were we? So, he tells her that, you know, how Chris got killed in her sleep. And then Nancy does a rendition of the Freddy rhyme back to him because she's heard this before, and he goes, "Whoa, Freddy! Oh, whoa, you know that name too? Crazy. How do we know this? That's crazy."
No one's ever been named Freddy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I feel like I'm making fun of his delivery in like this scene, but no one's name. The fact that they're all dreaming of a guy named Freddy is weird. It's not just. That's a weird coincidence. Just
I don't know. He was on iCarly.
Oh, this is post iCarly.
Oh. This is now post iCarly.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess you're right.
A lot of people were dreaming of Freddie Benson.
I'm pretty sure.
So Jesse, he gives her the classic line of, you know, don't fall asleep because if you die in your dream, you die in real life. Then Jesse gets arrested.
And gosh darn it, he falls asleep.
Yep. Well, not yet. Well, there's like 3 or 4 scenes.
Eventually, after he gets incarcerated.
Yeah. Now we head over to Quentin, he's at that, you know, the classic bookstore where you look up stuff on your laptop as you do. Mm-hmm. So he's looking up some sleep deprivation.
The internet's smarter in the bookstore, Austin. We've been over this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It knows more things.
Then Quentin, there's a little girl there, so he follows her. Once again, a random little girl's there. Oh, wow, we must be in a dream. This movie, which is something I saw someone else point out, there are so many, like, cues and stuff to tell you, hey, we're in a dream now. Unlike, like, that first movie that, like, artistically makes you not know.
Reality.
Yeah.
Like, there is, like, a moment, like, I think it was the Nancy stupid face through the wall scene, or it's a different Nancy dream scene, where, like, her water drops go back up on her cup before we even get anything else, and you're like, okay, cool. We're in a dream now. Thanks for blatantly telling me it immediately. But yeah, so he follows the little girl through, I said the library because I didn't realize it was a bookstore because why would it be? But it's a bookstore.
Functions as a library in this movie.
It kind of, it's
just all intents and purposes.
Yeah. And he sees, while he's walking down there, he sees a group of kids with someone there, and then, oh my gosh, a jump scare again. It's Freddy in our face. Gosh, this movie's jump scares. Oh. And then right after that jump scare happens, Nancy wakes him up, and Jesse. Then we cut to Jesse. Oh, also, real quick before we move on, I want to point out something that someone else pointed out. I remember who. I watched a couple of videos on this. I remember which one pointed out. When Jesse looks up when Quentin looks up sleep deprivation, he's on this like crappy knockoff Google. That's not my problem with it. My problem is after he types in his thing, he hits enter, and then uses his mouse to click the button, gotta blast, or whatever it is for their feeling lucky button. Which means he should have already been sent to the link from hitting enter, but still has to go over and click the button, the feeling lucky, gotta blast, whatever stupid thing it is in for Giga Blast internet, search engine. But it's just like, wait, what? Why did he have to hit enter and go over? You do one or the other.
Program the website correctly for Giga Blast.
Apparently, Giga Blast needs you to hit enter and then gotta blast.
Then click. It's a combination of both.
It's like it was. I didn't notice it the first time, but it is something that needs to be pointed out because it is so stupid.
Like, this is, if you know one of those about movie like gaming scenes where you just.
But the difference with that is not everyone plays video games. Everyone uses Google. Your grandpa can use Google at this point. Everyone.
I can guarantee you grandpa wouldn't give count that you hit enter and then clicks.
He wouldn't notice it, but he wouldn't have done...
He hit enter.
He wouldn't have done both. Even grandpa knows not to do both. He might have not noticed the mistake in the movie, but he would have known not to do both.
Well, if it takes longer than 2 seconds, grandpa might hit enter and then click.
That's true. Maybe Quentin, it was just taking too long for him. And it made him really sad. That's why he looks like he's going to cry the rest of the movie, right?
Look, the ways of Giga Blast are beyond our
understanding.
That's true.
Beyond comprehension.
So now we cut to Jesse in jail, who, posts bail, which I could be wrong. But if you're, like, the main suspect for a murder, I don't know if you get a bail option.
Yeah.
But also,
which is maybe our cue for the dream sequence.
Up $1 million, dude.
Yeah,
that's what
but
happened.
Also, he's also didn't post bail because he's in a dream, and now he's in the boiler room, baby. It's back. Which is another thing I want to point out real quick, just because it's not that big a deal. But this movie tries so hard to explain why Freddy is who Freddy is. There are multiple backstory scenes we're going to get later, but we've changed his backstory now, where there's no reason for him to be connected to a boiler room.
That's true.
Just want to point that out. There was no boiler room at the preschool.
Actually speaking.
Like,
there's no factory.
There is no reason
there's no boiler room
to...
at the factory that they chased him to.
I mean, I guess he died.
Or in the preschool.
Yeah.
It looks pretty boilery in that room that he gets cornered in. I feel like I see some...
Maybe, but...
Some rivets.
I feel like it's...
Rivets?
I feel like...
It's just a factory.
In the second movie, in Freddy's Revenge, they go, hey, it's because he took his kids to this place with a boiler room. That's why he takes you to the boiler room.
Yeah.
This movie goes, well, he was actually in a preschool. But also, he's still obsessed with the boiler room. Because it's the aesthetic you recognize for this movie. And we have to copy the aesthetic, because that's why you're here.
On that good old nostalgia to keep you in the theater.
So now Jesse is running around with Freddy chasing him in the boiler room. And randomly, as he's getting chased, he sees... I saw someone else mention, I didn't realize it when we saw it, but I just saw kids behind these pipes. Apparently that's like the young versions of all of them behind the pipes. So yeah, he gets chased past these kids in the pipes. Then Freddy, keeps chasing him, and Jesse stops, though, as he sees Chris and Dean's body, and then Freddy catches him and tells him, like, hey, why don't you hang around, I think, because, in a creepier voice than that, because it's not the, Freddy from the old movie who would have, like, really been making a joke. I don't know. Whatever. He tells him, I think there's a joke there. Might have not been.
Does he, he's like, he says something, and then the other guy says like "screw you," and he's like, well, "That's a little bit fast for me. Why don't we hang
that's
around?"
Nancy at the end.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But yeah,
you know, this whole movie really just blurs together.
And you know, I understand. But yeah, so then he disappears though. Freddy's gone. He has a little clip with him, and he's gone. I mean, Jesse's fine. You know, he could just walk away,
like,
and then boom, in a very digital scene, but in one that looks awesome.
Yeah,
Freddy kills Jesse by stabbing him from behind through with the claw, similar to how Jason killed Freddy in the last movie we watched.
Because Freddy is
when in doubt, we have to just copy scenes that were done in other movies. Even if it's done slightly different, it's still always the same. We can't have any. We can only have like one or two good original ideas in this movie. The rest has to be copied from something. But yeah. And then, after he does that, we cut to the guy in his cell, and a really funny scene, like yelling, I didn't do it! Please, I'm innocent! Which I thought was fun. It was like, okay, that's fair. Like, the guy he was in jail, like, his cellmate was, like, freaking out because the guy just died in front of him, and he's, afraid of his life. Then we cut back to Freddy, who hangs him up and tells him, a creepy science lesson about how, after the heart is stopped, your brain still goes for 6-7 minutes, so we have 6 more minutes to play. And
that does happen.
Yeah, it happened. He gets 6 more minutes of playtime. That's pretty cool. But yeah, then we cut to the least interesting characters in this movie, Quentin and Nancy, who are our main characters, and they are the most boring. They're doing some research, and we also get some exposition during this research. Then we cut to Nancy's mom. Sorry. Then, as they're doing that, they go digging because they realize, oh wait, maybe we were connected through something. Let's go looking for it. And they go looking through the house, trying to find information about this preschool that they both dreamed about. And they find pictures of it. And then Nancy's mom comes home and finds her. Wait, no, sorry, this is the wrong scene. I read Nancy's mom comes home and thought that was this scene. This is a different scene, I guess. This is just an exposition scene. I don't remember what they exposit. Whatever. Then I guess Quentin leaves, and now we cut to Nancy's mom, who comes home and finds her doing art, and Nancy asks her about a connection to Freddy, and she's like, and her mom does I really liked the acting in this scene from her mom. Once again, I wish either the character was written better for Nancy or the acting, whichever one it is. I wish I cared about the other half of this scene. I wish she asked her mom with any sort of, like, feeling behind these questions, but she just, do we have
any connection?
Do I know these people at all? And her mom's like, no. Her mom did a really good job of it's that moment, like, where you can see, like, in her eyes, like, the actress's eyes, like, oh, she knows, like, crap, how do you know this?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I have no idea.
It was a good scene, yeah.
I was like, once again, it was a scene that was good, but also simultaneously bad by pointing out how bad of a character Nancy is in this, where Nancy was, like, had no emotion when she's asking these questions, because for whatever reason, writing or acting, the actor, she never shows emotion in this scene until, like, the final scene.
There was not even the faintest squint of suspicion.
There was no there was no moment where
know.
she realized her mom was lying to her from her. Like, we couldn't see that. And
well,
unresponsive.
Then we cut to Nancy's mom, who's downstairs making a call saying that Nancy's starting to remember. Remember what? Then we get a redo of the. We're just gonna run over the burp. We don't have to acknowledge it. It happened, and I feel like this movie deserves it. Then we get a redo of the bathroom scene. Once again, this is the one scene of the a million redo scenes where it wasn't absolutely atrocious, because at least it was practical. Was it needed? Did I go, they did it better than the last movie? No. They just did it to the literal same level of, his claws through her legs. Ooh.
Yeah.
But then she wakes up. Before they...
she wakes up.
Yeah, I know. I always say she wakes up even if she's not actually awake, because when we get the reveal, like, oh my gosh, she's still in the dream. But she wakes up, presumably, before, though, they can redo the other half of that scene from the first movie, because she's not going to get pulled underwater. She's going to go to her bedroom, which is snowing. And then it's not her bedroom. We're at that preschool, because the preschool is the gosh darn Elm Street house of this movie. I know I acknowledged it as such earlier, but it definitely is. We are... And I get it. It does make complete sense for this plot, but it is every other scene we're at this preschool, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the place we're supposed to care about. If you haven't figured out the plot yet, they hit it over your head every time you see this preschool. But yeah, so she's at this preschool now, and I will say, I think this is an example of one of my favorite scenes in this movie. This is one of the most unsettling scenes I have seen in a movie. And that's what they were going for, so I respect it. Like, the creepiness of Freddy as he is just, like, calling her little Nancy, like, talking about how she was his favorite one.
You were my number one.
Yeah, and he licks her face, and it is so unsettling. But
that did give me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I respect it, because that's what they wanted here. They wanted to go there.
Get under your skin?
Yeah, they wanted... And I want to point this out here, not to... pull up old wounds from the last podcast, because me and Isaiah have talked since and we're good now, but I think this movie delves into a really heavy matter, but there's weight to it and there's a reason behind it. It is central to the plot. There is a moment where, spoiler, Nancy, well, I mean kind of, because it's a nightmare movie, so we have to have the fake out at the very end, but Nancy gets her revenge. In the last movie, I don't remember the character's name. The chick who got killed while being assaulted just died. So she didn't get... That scene meant nothing. This scene is creepy, and the whole story is creepy, and it goes to a place that some people might find, uneasy. And I will say, last time I said, oh, maybe don't do that at all in movies. And I want to stand corrected. I think there are times where it makes sense to go to that kind of heavy place, if it's warranted. I think this movie, despite it still being a polished turd at best, at least when it comes to this stuff, they treat it with respect and make it mean something. So yeah, I really liked this scene. It was really creepy, and that's what it was supposed to be. And then Quentin wakes her up with a phone call, and then Nancy and Quentin. This is where they find out about the preschool, the scene I was talking about earlier, because she just went to the preschool in her dream. So they go to look for more information on it, and they realize that they all went there, and then that must mean that Freddy was connected. So they go digging for that picture, and Nancy's mom's here, and she, Nancy confronts her hey, why did you lie to us? And there's this scene where they go back and forth for maybe
why'd you lie? I didn't lie. Why'd you lie? I didn't lie.
Maybe one or two too many I didn't lie, especially because her mom did lie. She does then explain why she lied, but she literally yells, "I didn't lie!" twice before going, "Oh, I just didn't want you to know." It's that's fair, and honestly,
here's why I lied.
Yeah, I get why she wanted to protect her child from this horrible memory. I get it. But you did just lie after you yelled, "I didn't lie! I didn't lie! Why'd you lie?" Yeah. Sorry, no, it's, "I didn't lie!" Why did you lie? Because Nancy sucks.
Why did you lie?
Why did you lie to me? I didn't lie.
Why did you lie to me?
Then once again, I like to point out scenes when they are really well done. I actually really like, there's this, cinematography-wise, there's this point where we're looking at the picture, and the camera goes into the picture and it becomes the scene, and I thought that was beautiful as the cinematography side of it, to go from the picture into the scene of the kids running around at picture day. It was really cool. Yeah. And then we get some of the backstory of Freddy about how he was a gardener there at the preschool, and also lived at the preschool, which I feel would have been a red flag from anyone. Any parent would have been why does the gardener live in the basement of this place? I feel whenever someone lives in a basement, and it's not their parents' house, it's creepy.
You're living in the basement of a federally funded building that you are automatically on a list.
It might be a private preschool. We don't know.
It looks pretty private.
Yeah, it could have been a private preschool. But it's still a little weird. There was apparently no red flags there, though. And we get a little more information about how all the kids loved him. Specifically, he loved Nancy, though. She was his favorite, and, he liked her art, and then we get this reveal that things started being kind of weird though, as we see scratches on her back, and she we have little girl her telling her mom that like, hey, he takes me to his secret cave, and then that's roughly where the scene ends here, and you're like, oh, okay. This, if you couldn't tell with the Katie Cassidy scene earlier, whatever, Chris is her name, yeah, where he really hints at the fact that she was his victim before. Here is where we go, no. In case you weren't sure, yes, he is a child predator in this one. Yeah. And Nancy's mom tells her that it's okay though, because he left town. There's nothing to worry about. These must just be repressed memories coming back. These dreams, they didn't really happen. Which Nancy's not completely buying, but Quentin seems to be really buying at this point. He's like, mom said that, and my dad's here. I gotta go with him. Bye. And he leaves with his dad, who is Clancy Brown.
Mr. Krabs.
Yeah, Mr. Krabs. It's like, he's in this movie for like 3 scenes.
You're Quentin, me boy.
Yeah. Now we cut to Quentin, who is... Oh, sorry, no. Before we cut to Quentin...
On the verge of tears?
Yes, for his whole time in the movie. But now we cut to just Nancy, who is looking up the other kids in the picture, and she's finding out that the one... Because there was a scene earlier where they mentioned, oh, we gotta find the other kids from preschool. And she's looking at all the pictures. She's looking them up on, Gigablast. I don't know if she's hitting enter and... clicking the button. She might.
Well,
and
how Gigablast works.
And shift.
They don't
a lot of
show
keys
the shot of her clicking both, so I don't know if she did.
All the function keys as well.
Yeah.
It takes 10 clicks to make a single search on Gigablast.
I mean,
it's not.
They want to make sure you actually want to see what you're searching for. Yeah. So she clicks through 14 times, and she finds out that all the other kids are dead.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Quentin, who is on the swim team, because that's a feature about his character.
She clicks on all, and we get a very long and drawn out scene of one of the kids.
No, we don't.
Last vlog.
No, we don't. That is after this
later.
Scene. Yep. We cut back and forth to her. Okay. I have it down here a little bit later. And I was taking notes as it happened. So nope, not yet.
All right.
I can understand why you'd think it was.
I thought that's where we just Gigablasted it.
Yeah. You would think so, but we have.
We were on the internet, Austin.
This is where she finds out she sees the first 2 articles saying this character's dead. This character's you've never heard of is dead.
She's a slow reader.
Then we cut to Quentin. Maybe this is happening at the same time. Then we cut to Quentin, who's on the swim team because he is, I guess. That was never mentioned before. He's just at swim practice.
Not even once.
Yeah, as he's swimming for a little bit, he gets pulled underwater because I guess he fell asleep while swimming, and now he's in a gross.
All the time.
He's in this gross rainwater pool kind of thing.
It's definitely tarry water. It's very dark color.
Yeah, it's gross looking. And then Fred Krueger's here, and he's getting chased down by their parents to this work shed / possibly boiler room building that you don't really see.
Hopefully a factory building of some sort.
Some kind of rusty.
Yeah, he gets into this building. We don't really see the inside of this building that much before he gets gasoline Molotov cocktailed. Yeah, because it's not typically a Molotov cocktail is in a bottle. This is in a a gasoline marked gasoline canister. It says gasoline on it, so you know it's gasoline.
It's only a sparkling bomb because it comes from the Molotov region of France.
Yeah, it's like that. Where it's yes. And
this is a gasolinatov.
So yeah, after he's there, we also hear him yelling that he was innocent, but
as we all know from the very subtle implications laid out before, he's definitely not.
We don't know that yet. Chris.
Oh my gosh,
Chris, there is a point in this movie where you're supposed to think he isn't, and we're in that point.
Yeah, they definitely put that at the wrong point of the movie.
Yeah.
Especially after
it's so rushed.
the tongue-licking scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. It's badly done.
Why did you put this here, not slightly earlier in the movie? Because there's no reason you couldn't have.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
There's just this swim dream scene that just is interrupting our Gigablast time.
Yep, you understand.
For really no reason.
Now we find out, and he gets burned alive, and then he runs at Quentin, and we cut to the coach reviving him in the real world. Then we find Nancy, who finds a vlog from a guy, from one of the little kids who's talking about his nightmares. He has multiple vlogs. It's kind of a long scene, and he's begging for help. And then there's this how this scene ends, which is a conundrum if you really think about it in any way possible. Somehow, this last one ends with him falling asleep and getting thrown at the camera like Chris did on the video version. Which, how did this video get uploaded?
Yeah, how did he upload it after and Freddy moved his dying hand over to the upload button?
You might think now in 2022, you're like, well, maybe he live streamed it. But my response to that would be, this was on a personal blog website in 2010. Yeah. So no, he didn't. So yeah, that guy's dead. And I guess now she knows a little bit more about nothing, really. We just know, I don't know why we cut back to this guy.
All the other kids are dead.
We already had the scene where we established that all the other kids were dead. Why did we cut back to this scene? She didn't learn anything new in this scene.
It taught us
that people can vlog and die and then upload the
Sorry,
vlog
I remember why we learned this scene. So we could technically get another jump scare when his head comes flying at the camera. Because that's all this movie is.
That is technically a jump scare that happens. There is an audio cue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now Quentin and Nancy confront his dad about how Freddy might have been innocent, actually, Dad. And he's kind of like, well, I mean, I guess you're right. He could have been, but I don't think he was.
He could have been. I have to live with that every day, son. Yeah. Yarg, make me Krabby
me
Patty.
First dollar.
Where's me first dime?
Then Nancy, as they're leaving, because his dad is... Sorry, we didn't mention this at any other point because it doesn't matter to the story. His dad is the principal for some reason. So they're at the school for this scene. So when they leave... Oh, sorry, also. I guess we'll mention it in a second. So after that, Nancy, as they're walking, sees a bloody body bag. Yes, once again, a redone scene from the last movie. And at this point, this is the first time we're seeing once again, actually, one of the few things I actually kind of like about this movie is it was established in, I think, the exposition scene way earlier that we said, oh, what did they exposit? I think it was this. That's where we found out about the concept of micronaps, which is something that actually happens like when you get really sleep deprived, where your brain just kind of shuts down for a couple seconds. Like, which, if you're fighting Freddy, that's crazy. Like, and I really like the way this is one of two times it happens throughout the movie where, once again, they don't go into it enough where it means anything, but I really like the concept of this sleep deprivation where you kind of just start drifting into sleep in the real world, and it's a really cool way to have someone have to fight Freddy. I mean,
it is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Then we cut to Quentin, who's at the pharmacy trying to get some of his not Adderall. I don't remember what they call it. It's Zumacil or something stupid.
And I will say that in these scenes, Quentin and Nancy are probably at their best.
Yeah.
In there's the scenes where they're super sleep deprived and hysterical.
Yeah. I will also say I think the final fight scene with Nancy, she's also not bad. She's okay at playing completely terrified, apparently.
Yeah, completely deranged
or absolutely
hysteric
terrified
characters.
She's okay at that.
But being a normal person, that's hard. Which I think might have been our critiques on the original performance of the original Nancy.
It kind of was. I think my opinion on Heather was
like, as a normal person, she wasn't great, but when she was hysteric, she was all right.
I still stand by. I think even in that movie, Heather Langenkamp is a more interesting Nancy than this Nancy.
No, that's fair. But if you think about it, she's really just doing a loyal adaptation.
Once again, they are just copying something from the other movie, but doing it worse. Actually, it's a perfect example of everything in this movie. But the pharmacist,
a faithful adaptation of what it's trying to do.
The pharmacist will not give him more of his pills because he doesn't have a refill, and that's how that works. The pharmacist is doing a very good job being a pharmacist. Respect to the pharmacist.
Doing his job.
As it's happening, Nancy is nodding off in the car, and she starts getting attacked by Freddy. So she decides to use the cigarette lighter in the car, which I guess, if you're a young child, you may be like, a cigarette lighter in a car? And that's fair, because we stopped doing that probably around 2010.
Dude, that's a good point.
Because no one really smokes anymore, at least not in their car.
Well, yeah, they vape, Austin.
Yeah.
They smoke. They just don't smoke.
No one needs a cigarette lighter built into their car. That was a thing that existed for forever. Cigarette lighters in cars, which is really crazy how addicted to nicotine we were as a country, that was a thing that was needed in a car.
You can thank 1950s propaganda for that,
basically, yeah.
And ashtrays in every possible nook and cranny of the car.
Everybody's smoking.
It's really kind of crazy when you think about it now. Because now we're as a society, for the most part, we've, cut out cigarettes. For the most part, I understand. Like movies that are set in the 80s sometimes get crap for even using cigarettes, even though that would have been accurate to the time. I know Stranger Things got a little bit of crap for Hopper, who is, a hero, smoking. So there were some parent groups who were like, well, they're praising, smoking. And it's like, no, not really.
Worship.
Hopper's kind of especially at that point when he's smoking regularly, he's kind of a screw-up. But this isn't a review of Stranger Things, but it is just
a recovering alcoholic.
Yeah. This is just a point of, it's kind of a really... This is the last point, basically, they could have made this movie and had this scene make sense in it. Because
it's a good point.
A year or two later, you'd be like, why does that car still have a cigarette lighter in it? All right, sure.
There's your cigarette lighter fact of the day, kids.
Yeah. Hey, it's relevant to the story.
It is.
She wakes up, kind of, but actually it didn't work fully because she's, really sleep deprived. So now she's running inside, and then once again...
Micronaps.
An amazingly shot scene. We have her going down the hall, the aisle of the convenience store, while it cuts back and forth to being the boiler room.
Yeah.
And we also have Freddy
that is cool.
scratching the boiler room, and then things getting knocked over in the real world. It is.
That is a pretty cool shot.
Beautiful. I wish this was in a better. Once again, this is one of those scenes where you go, man, I wish this was in a better movie, because this is actually really cool. And it ends with him slicing her arm and her grabbing part of his sweater, because we have to have that moment in all of these movies where they realize, I can pull him into the real world.
If we get hurt in the real world, we can pull him into the real world.
She pulls him, and after she's now cut, we have her being rushed to the hospital by Quentin, and at the hospital, we have Nancy's mom who's there, and she still doesn't want to believe her. And then there's the doctor who shows up, who wants to give Nancy a sedative, and she's played by Chris's favorite actress, Judith Hoag. Woo,
Judith Hoag, baby! She's the mom from Halloween Town, for those of you wondering.
She's also, for people who don't care about Halloween Town, and probably her bigger role, she was also April O'Neil in the Ninja Turtles movie, the live-action one. Chris has a little bit of a crush on her. If you watched our Halloween Town reviews, you would know this.
Judith Hoag, if you're watching this and you're single...
Bro, she was looking kind of old then in 2010, and it's 12 years later.
Be my sugar mama, please.
All right, moving right along. Judith Hoag's hand turns into Freddy's claws before she, Nancy screams herself awake.
Freaks out? Yeah.
Then Nancy's mom goes out with the, Judith, and she signs a waiver to let her get a sedative. But Nancy and Quentin have escaped while that happened.
They really talked in depth about getting that sedative, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess you had to, go over and tell her, hey, you have to sign off on them. Which fine, whatever, I don't care. They just needed an excuse for these kids to escape so we can get to this final scene and just be done with this movie.
Boy, howdy did they do it fast.
Yeah. So now we cut back. Now we're in the car, and Quentin is deciding to shoot himself up with some adrenaline that he stole from the hospital. He offers some to Nancy.
He's like,
I just snagged it off a cart.
Yeah.
About to go Pulp Fiction on myself.
Basically,
and then
it's
Nancy is
I
really
can't fall
boring
asleep if I'm
again.
on adrenaline, and he shoots himself up, and she's like, no, I'm good, which is, so we could have this shot for later.
And thank you for reading that in the faithful delivery that
Nancy
she gave us.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
I'm good.
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Also, at some point in this point is where we have that scene where they talk, which shows that I didn't even write it down. I just remember that it's here. This is where we have that scene where they go, maybe when this is done, we could fall in love and get married and have babies. Or something crappy like that. And she makes some sort of joke about how, I don't want to be a dream child. Have you seen that movie? And
No, I don't think she says that. I think in your dreams or something.
Yeah, something. We basically said the same thing.
Yeah. Have you seen Dream Child?
Have you seen Dream Child? It's a trip. I wish I hadn't. That's what she says in the movie. Because Dream Child exists in this movie. Only Dream Child. None of the other ones exist. But Dream Child is canon to exist in this Nightmare universe. Where was I before that stupid joke?
That's a great question.
Oh, sorry. No, I guess I'm wrong. Here we have, I write down, Nancy and Quentin have a mind-numbing heart-to-heart.
God.
Mind-numbing heart.
I thought I remember you feeling somewhat strongly about this.
Yeah, because I did. It was a mind-numbing heart-to-heart. I didn't write down the stupid joke she gave, apparently. But I did, because it's, once again, like we've said multiple times, so I don't want to harp on it much more, but these two are the worst characters in this movie, and they're the ones we spend time with. I don't care about either of them, and we're having them go back and forth with her delivering lines like, oh my gosh, maybe we could go. He's like half about to cry. Maybe we could go out together. And she goes, in your dreams. And you're like, okay, shut up. Can we have Freddy pop out in the middle of the street to end this scene? Oh, cool, we did. Jump scare with Freddy. But okay, it's over. Good. We're done with the stupid scene. Thanks, Freddy. This movie, it does something crazy. It makes you actually root for the child predator character. Because I'm rooting for Freddy at this point. I'm like, oh my gosh, Freddy ended this scene. Thank you.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. Freddy is awful in this movie in a great way. Yeah. Like, I like the actor does a great job and the character is interesting.
Portraying somebody
but he is absolutely awful. You do not root for him at all. I was making a joke about how bad this scene before Freddy popping out was.
Oh.
I want to make sure it's clear. I am not saying it was a joke. Susan, I'm joking.
I don't know. Your exact words from earlier were that you want to see more children die. Or something.
You're not wrong. I did say that.
All right.
So now we're at the preschool, and Quentin keeps having some, once again, cool, well done. This whole like micro naps thing where he's having these flashes of Freddy, and it's well done. This scene is. We're getting to the point where, honestly, there's not a lot of scenes at this point that I actively dislike from this point on. There's not a lot of scenes I love either, but I don't actively dislike anything that happens like post this point in the movie, I think, until we get to it in the notes and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh, that sucked. That might happen. I don't remember.
Possible.
I've seen this movie twice in 3 days, and I honestly don't remember most of it.
Still almost not memorable at all.
Yeah. Then they go downstairs and they find Freddy's room in the basement. And then Nancy finds a cork board, which is covering the secret cave. Oh my gosh, the secret cave was real. Freddy's not innocent. Remember that plot line we put in here for no reason? It's resolved now.
Yep.
Nancy has flashbacks of Freddy making her paint. And then Quentin finds pictures, which Freddy had of little Nancy. And yeah, that's
not good.
Yeah, I mean, they don't show anything, obviously, but it's a dark implication when he finds those pictures, because if you know anything about that kind of a character that he's playing in the real world, that's something that happens. Like, and it's like, you're like, oh, once again, like, I want to give this movie credit for this storyline. Is it dark as heck? And if you don't want that from your Freddy because you enjoyed rooting for Freddy, I get that. I do. I get why people didn't like. There are people who hated that they went there with this character, and I do get that. But I actually think they did a really good job doing that character the way they did.
Making their villainous?
Yeah, like it's like when he pulled out the second he pulled out those Polaroids, I was like, "Oh shoot. We're going there." And so like, and that's what I think that's what they wanted me to feel. So good on them. Now Nancy realizes that, she needs to pull Freddy into the real world to kill him. So Quentin and Nancy have a kiss because there's apparently a love story subplot that's kind of been hinted at, like we mentioned in the car scene, but They're kissing now. Apparently we're at kissing now point. We haven't established these characters really developing feelings for each other other than a line saying, maybe we could go on a date. And now they're kissing. But whatever.
Well, Austin, they might die soon.
I guess maybe that's the reason. But Nancy, she starts to go to sleep while Quentin goes and pulls the blade off of a paper cutter to use as a weapon.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Nancy falls all the way asleep, but Quentin realized he's in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and he's not the final girl, so he has to fall asleep when he's not supposed to.
Yeah, as soon as the other person falls asleep, he has to immediately fall asleep after being told not to fall asleep.
To be fair to Quentin as a character, they've at least been establishing him as being so close to the edge for the last 10 minutes that it actually makes sense. It's not like...
They did establish micro-naps, I guess.
Once we go back to, once again, the Better movie.
This is a macro nap, though.
Yeah. We go back to the Better movie. Johnny Depp's Glenn. He just kind of didn't even seem that tired, and then just goes, "No, I guess I won't go. I'll just go to sleep," and he dies. He's like, Nancy says, "Hey, stay awake," and he just hadn't been acting tired the whole movie, but now can't stay awake. I'll give this movie credit at least that they established him being that close to the edge, that it wasn't... You still go, they hit that point in the movie, but it's like a point in the movie where you go, at least they earned it. I think they earned him falling asleep here more than, honestly, most of the other times this exact story arc has come up in literally, I think, every movie.
That's fair. And I guess, he did resort to using adrenaline at some point, so it is pretty well established that he's struggling a lot.
Now he's in the boiler room, and Freddy starts cutting him up, stabs him in the chest, and then
somehow he doesn't die.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes people don't die. I mean, it's a deep wound. Maybe he's gonna die after the movie ends.
He doesn't.
He might. We don't know where he gets taken to the hospital. We don't know if he died at the hospital. But Freddy realizes that he hears Nancy, so he's like, I don't care about you anymore. I'm gonna leave you. So he leaves him because Freddy, is obsessed with Nancy. That's been established. Little Nancy, she was his number one. So he goes off to find her. And then we have a really dark joke that, I'll be honest, really landed well with me. It's dark, but I thought it was pretty funny, which is where Nancy...
The one that I thought came earlier.
Yeah. Nancy, once she meets up with Freddy here, she tells him, screw you. She doesn't say screw, but we don't curse on this podcast. And Freddy responds... Freddy asks her, what game do you want to play? And she says, screw you. And he says, oh, that sounds fun, but you're a little fast. Which, here's the thing, that's dark as heck, but I kind of like it. It kind of made me laugh. I was like, oh, dang. That's just my thoughts on that joke. Cancel me if you need to. I understand. Where were we?
Nancy.
Nancy starts telling him that he's not real. And he tells her that I am real. And then they're in the new knockoff Elm Street house now. And Nancy pulls a Laurie Strode, and she goes and hides in the closet. But Freddy says boo in the closet with another jump scare, and they pop out of it together. As she runs away, she falls in a blood thing, which I heard someone point out is like, oh, see, they're kind of like redoing the stairs, but I would argue they're redoing the literal gooey walkway from the third movie, Dream Warriors. It's definitely closer to that in my mind, but yeah, she falls in that, and then once again, we have to just, not only are we reusing a thing for someone to fall in, we're going to then have Freddy reuse a line from Dream Master as he tells her, how's this for a wet dream? Because now we're at that point, really at this point where there's multiple points where you go, you're going to reuse a line from that movie?
It's so exact.
I get when we reuse the spots.
I think that was Dream Warriors.
It's Dream Master.
Because it was Joey's.
It's Joey's real death in Dream Master. He has the tongue-tied one in the one before that.
Right, I thought that was the one where he whips out the wet dream.
No, it's Dream Warrior. He says, you're tongue-tied, and the next movie he kills him in the waterbed.
Oh, right, because of the waterbed. Mm-hmm. Yep,
yeah,
you're right.
No, I have a way too weird of a good memory for this kind of crap. I remember which movie that movie. It's 4. It sucks. It's from Dream. It's from the first one that I didn't like.
I have a good enough memory to just remember the specific lines, but not exactly where they're from.
Then she falls on her bed, and she's in her little kid clothes, and she can't move off the bed. And Freddy comes in, and he gets real creepy. He says that I love. It's always been my favorite outfit, and he then also straight up he kind of says some. How do I even word that? He says your mouth's saying no, but your body's saying yes, which is such a weird, it's a real thing, real creeps say to people, and it's once again
it hits a little bit too close to home.
It does, but I don't mind
reality.
it. I get it. I respect that for this movie.
It still feels in character.
It feels so in character for this Freddy to just be that creepy, and I kind of love it. And then he starts. She won't look at him, so he's telling her to look at him. And this is where he gets real Batman-y, and he goes, "Look at me!" And I'm like, it feels like the "Where is she?" line from Batman from Dark Knight.
Where is me?
Yeah. Where is she? And you're like, "Look at me!" And you're like, okay. He hadn't been Batman. I mean, I know when I've been doing my Freddy impression, it's been closer to my Batman impression for this whole movie. But this is the only point where it really goes to that okay, we're going.
Yeah, I'd say the majority of his Freddy lands somewhere around more of a Joker.
Yeah, no, sure, but this line feels so Batman growl. It's okay, sure. And then he's about to. Then he kind of decides that he doesn't want to kill her yet, so he throws her off the bed, throws her at the wall. She picks up some scissors, stabs him in the face. And then I believe around this point, I don't remember exactly where in this fight scene, we have him tell her that you're in my world now. It's after she stabs him, how it doesn't hurt him.
He pulls out his eyeball and he's like, "You can't hurt me. You're in my world."
Yeah. Then we cut out to, as Nancy's about to die, we cut out to Quentin, who stabs her with adrenaline. Excuse me. And then we get a back and forth fight where, I say back and forth, the characters try to hurt Freddy for a little bit and just kind of can't, and he just kind of really tosses them around for a little while. Before Nancy eventually cuts off his hand right before he's about to kill Quentin, and then she slits Freddy's throat, and she, for some reason, which they set up in that last scene, she decides to quote Freddy versus Jason by saying that he's now in her world. B-word. We're good Christian boys. We don't curse, except for when we do, when it makes sense for the podcast. We have a couple times, but we try not to. But yeah, so we're at that point. We're going to directly quote lines from 4 and Freddy versus Jason.
It's lifted. Just blatantly lifted.
Oh, I will say one other line that they did lift it. Actually, once again, I liked the way it was because it was being in that really creepy portrayal. Before he stabs her with the adrenaline, Freddy does lick her face, and Tasker wears her boyfriend I'm your boyfriend now, which is a line from
that one?
I'm fine with that because it falls into that really creepy him. It was repurposing that line in a way that felt even creepier than it was in that first movie. So
okay.
I get if someone doesn't here's the thing, it is a rehash. I wish he didn't need that line, but it was the only one that felt like it made. I mean, yes, he's a very sexual character in this movie, so I guess him saying the line about a wet dream makes sense. But that's from 4. That's silly Freddy crap. This isn't silly Freddy. So it felt
sinister Freddy.
It felt more out of place in that. Well, I'm your boyfriend now, about to hurt her for the not wanting YouTube to get mad at us. That's screwed up, and this is a screwed up Freddy, and I'm okay with the screwed up Freddy. So then after that, Nancy decides, after she's killed Freddy now, after quoting Freddy vs. Jason, the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie, obviously. Don't listen to what Chris said. He's wrong. Then Nancy, she burns Freddy's corpse and the rest of the the basement. Kind of symbolic, burning away those evil memories, And then her and Quentin escape, and he gets in a hospital. She tells him the nightmare is over, and you're like, okay, sure it is. But it isn't, because now her and her mom are at home, and she gets pulled through the mirror by Fred. First we have Freddy in the mirror, behind her, and then he pulls her through. And once again, a completely like CG shot, but once again, not terrible. Like, I'm honestly surprised. They don't use it often. But when they come up with original things that are CGI in this movie, they do a pretty decent job. When they try to recreate things that weren't CGI, most of those land really flat. But yeah, so her mom gets pulled through the mirror and dies. And we end with new Nancy screaming her head off.
Yeah.
And that's the movie. And
2010.
I guess before we move into our final thoughts, I want to play a quick little game here.
Oh?
I might have to go with specifically Isaiah, because I think Chris might know, because we speculated a little bit. Paper. Where do you think this movie landed, Isaiah, when it comes to the box office?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
okay,
it doesn't have to be a no. I'm not asking for a specific number. I'm asking for, in comparison to the other movies.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Every time you bring this up, you hurt me with these facts.
Yeah.
Because they're just so wrong every time. Mm-hmm. It just makes me hate democracy. So I'm gonna say that this movie
no opinions allowed.
I'm gonna take a gamble and say this one did the best out of all of them at the box office.
Do you remember, Chris, what we discussed?
Well, you're not far off, Isaiah. It is the second best-selling movie.
Freddy vs. Jason. We're gonna run over because it's our last time we're ever talking about this. We're gonna start at the bottom and we're gonna talk about. Actually, we'll start at the top. What the most successful was Freddy vs. Jason, which, to be fair, we'll base it just off of domestic, because only the three most recent ones were actually released internationally, so it's not as fair to count those numbers.
Yeah.
But Freddy vs. Jason made $82 million. This movie made $63 million. Then we go to Dream Master, which made $49 million. Then Dream Warriors, the first of the good ones we've talked about, which made $44 million. Then Freddy's Dead with $34 million. Freddy's Revenge, number 2, probably my favorite, which made $29 million. Then we go back to the original in place number 7 with $25 million, which, once again, there is an element of inflation. Some of these numbers, but there's also an element of a lot of people saw Nightmare on Elm Street 1, liked it, and then people saw it on VHS and stuff, and went to see the sequels. So it does make sense that some of these sequels, especially this era, sequels did do better. It just the way it is. Then we have Nightmare 5, which might be the worst in my mind. I don't know. 6 is also horrible. I know Chris will probably say Freddy vs. Jason, but I don't agree with that sentiment.
I will.
But I really hated 5. 5 made only $22 million. Quite possibly tied in my mind for the best one is New Nightmare, which only made $18 million.
That's 2, right?
That's the last one.
New Nightmare's the last one.
That's like number 7.
The one
that's
right before.
That's
Freddy
the meta
vs.
one.
Jason.
That's the meta. That's the one with Heather Langenkamp playing Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Heather. Yeah.
It's an amazing movie, but fans did not care. The audience did not care when it happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it did bad. So yeah, that is our box office little discussion there of where those movies land. I would argue most of them are in the wrong spot for elite quality, at least. I mean, like, but yeah,
just goes to show you the box office does not reflect the quality of the movie.
It reflects how many people saw it, and also, recency as well, because the 2 most recent ones did the best by far. Like, it's really not even close when you compare them to the other ones. Like, and especially once you add in global, like both of those I believe hit like the 100 millions mark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, my thoughts on this movie, which I feel like I've hinted at throughout. I don't like this movie. I would probably say this movie is a bad movie. But, as we've kind of hinted at, there is a discourse online, because this movie wasn't exactly what the originals were, that this movie is terrible. And I don't understand that sentiment. This movie's not good, but there are some moments that I think are really good. And I didn't hate this movie. Like, if I were to rank it, it would be probably the top of the bad ones. So, like, it's above the ones I really didn't like, and at the level where I'm never going to watch it again. But if I had to choose between like this, probably 4, 5, and 6, I would probably choose this over any of those 3. Those movies I hated most. I hated 5 and 6 a lot. 4 I didn't like, and this one I didn't like. But 4 also had a couple moments that were good. This movie, we talked about it as we went through it. There were a couple moments that were really good. I really love Jackie's portrayal of Freddy. It's different. I get it. It's not Freddy. It's not the Freddy everyone... Freddy is one of those characters that, because he was only ever played by Robert Englund before this, people think of he is Freddy. Like, Jason, I'm a Kane Hodder boy, but Kane Hodder played him in the most movies any actor did, but it was 4 of the 12 movies the character was in. Like, Freddy was in 8 of the 9 movies that had Freddy in it. Like, so like I get why people went, this isn't Robert Englund, this isn't good. But I really liked his darker take on it. I'm glad he didn't try to just be Robert Englund. He tried to do his own thing. I think Katie Cassidy deserves tons of credit for her very short time in this movie, but I really liked her work in it. I do like the really dark story here. I can get why people didn't want it, because once again, Freddy was one of those characters by like even movie 2, but definitely by his 3rd movie, he was the character you were rooting for. So like I get like why people didn't want him to be a child predator. I do. But also I'd argue that was in Wes Craven's initial concept, and it was also really heavily hinted at in that first movie anyway, so he kind of really always was. But I liked that part of this movie. Yeah, that's my thought is, yeah, I would put this, honestly, I would lean slightly more towards bad, but I would probably just call this movie there. This movie is Nancy from this movie. It's just there. I don't really dislike it, but I don't like it either. It exists. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really, honestly, one of the greatest insults you can deliver to any movie.
Fair.
You know, the old saying goes, you know, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy.
I think so.
And that really is just what this movie is just like the embodiment of apathy. It doesn't really make you feel any one way or the other for most of the movie. Like Austin has said, there is some like dark and compelling scenes, but everything around that is just like meh. I got a fart in the wind. It's just gone. I don't care. Yeah. The worst part about this movie is that there's these really cool scenes, or not really cool, but really unsettling scenes, surrounded by like an hour and 20 minutes of runtime that don't make you feel one way or the other. And it's just boring and hard to sit through. You're just waiting. And then most of the scary scenes don't land. And there is a lot of them. You're like, oh, is there going to be death? No. Oh, is there going to be no. Oh. Yeah, that wasn't scary. All right. Oh, he said this really unsettling thing. And back to more jump scares that do not land. More dialogue that I do not care about. More flat affect acting. Yeah, everything around it is kind of just eh. And I think that's probably the worst part about it.
Yeah, I mostly agree with those assessments. Kind of like we discussed earlier, the plot regarding the children having been directly abused by Freddy, I think is really fresh. And it was not even something that I had considered lacking in the initial movies. But now that it's here, I almost think to myself like, oh, why didn't they come up with that before? You know, it makes the previous relationships between Freddy and the main characters in the previous movies a little bit less direct. And in this one, it seems like, of course, you know, Freddy's chasing after these kids. You know, his relationship to them is so, I mean, nefarious, obviously, but also like there's a genuine cause and effect going on with these characters, and they're pretty deeply interlinked with Freddy. I think that's the redeeming quality of the movie, and it's hard for me to pinpoint another one. I will part with y'all on, like I said, I agree with you on the assessment of the movie and the ranking of the movie. That I also would rank it as like the best of the worst. But I was not a fan of this portrayal of Freddy. I mostly agree that he was effectively sinister, and that was good as a villain. But I don't know if it's the acting or I think more so the way he was portrayed, especially when we first see him, like up until pretty much about at the end of the movie. Um, he's not. There's not a lot of like looking right at the camera. He's shrouded a lot. He seems to mumble, and his face is a little bit muppety. Like it doesn't seem to quite move with the words he's saying. And I don't know. He seems to be whispering. It's really hard for me to put my finger on it. But when I compare him to the original Freddy that we know, who was so much more brash, even in movie number one, where he wasn't silly and goofy, he was still scary in one, but very much in the center of the camera. And I didn't get that from this one. I don't know why. I don't have a real solid argument on that point. I just think that the other Freddy was much more in your face, I guess. I don't know. Doesn't As I say that, I'm starting to tell myself like, oh, this later Freddy, the more recent one, is scarier in that respect. So maybe there's something to that. But yeah, mediocrity. You can expect a certain floor of quality based on the money that you get from these remakes. They got more to throw at it, and so it's a little bit more visually polished. But it's not like the Jason movies where it's so obviously low budget on the first few. Like the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and something that they maintain. Eventually the only good quality in those movies is the practical effects. Like those are so well done, and a lot of hard work went into them, and it doesn't look cheap at all. And they made it look cheaper in this remake with a lot of the digital stuff. So, yeah, there's a certain freshness to the general plot of the story. I have heard much worse dialogue.
We have definitely.
We have undoubtedly heard much worse dialogue.
Mhm.
This isn't really unnatural. It's just kind of bland. So
Yeah.
Yeah. We're done with Freddy, though. We have officially ended the Freddy part of this arc. We do still have one more movie on our huge Freddy versus Jason arc, because next week we are talking about the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, which I've heard different opinions on, so we'll find out our opinions next week when we watch Friday the 13th, 2009. Bum, bum, bum. All right, I've been Austin. Goodbye.
And Chris, goodbye.
bye.